1. The morning that changed the world. It was a clear, cloudless morning on September 11, 2001. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center. 17 minutes later, United Flight 175 hit the South Tower. By 10:03 a.m., Flight 93 went down in Pennsylvania. The Pentagon burned. Manhattan was in chaos, and the world, watching live, entered a new age of fear. But as smoke rose over New York and Washington, another question began to rise in the minds of Americans. How could this happen? How could the most powerful intelligence machine in the world, the CIA, FBI, NSA, and military intelligence, fail to see it coming? The answer would not come easily. It lay buried beneath bureaucracy, interagency rivalry, and human blind spots, a web of clues that were all there, but never connected. 2. The shadow before the storm. The story of 9/11 didn't begin on that morning. It began years earlier, in the deserts of Afghanistan, in the caves where a former Saudi millionaire named Osama bin Laden forged a new kind of war. By the late 1990s, Al-Qaeda had already declared war on the United States. They struck U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1998, killing over 200 people. In 2000, they attacked the USS Cole in Yemen. Each attack was a warning, like tremors before an earthquake, and each time the U.S. intelligence community investigated. They gathered fragments, chatter, phone intercepts, training records, travel documents. But the dots never connected. Why? Because the American intelligence system wasn't built for global terrorism. It was built for the Cold War, to track tanks, not terrorists, to monitor nuclear silos, not secret sleeper cells. The system was vast, powerful, but outdated, like a supercomputer running obsolete code. 3. The missed messages. Throughout the late 90s, intelligence warnings grew louder. The CIA's Counterterrorism Center, led by officers like Michael Scheuer and George Tenet, had a name pinned to their radar: Bin Laden. In 1999, the CIA briefed the White House about a catastrophic attack against U.S. interests. In early 2001, agents intercepted messages from Al-Qaeda operatives speaking cryptically of something big about to happen. But the problem was not a lack of information. It was too much information. Hundreds of agencies, from the NSA to local field offices, collected thousands of leads every day. Buried among them were pieces of the 9/11 puzzle. One piece sat in Phoenix, where an FBI agent named Kenneth Williams wrote a memo warning that Middle Eastern men were training at American flight schools. He suspected they might be preparing for terrorist operations. His memo was filed and forgotten. Another piece was in Minnesota, where agents arrested a man named Zacharias Moussaoui, who was learning to fly Boeing 747s, but showed no interest in how to land. The local FBI office wanted to search his computer. Headquarters refused. They said there wasn't enough probable cause. And then, there were two names, Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdar, both known Al-Qaeda members who had entered the U.S. months before the attacks. The CIA knew they were in America. The FBI did not. Those dots, sitting on desks across Washington, could have formed the map of September 11th, but the agencies never shared the map. 4. The walls within. To understand how 9/11 happened, we must look at the walls, not between nations, but between institutions. After Watergate, Congress passed laws to prevent intelligence agencies from spying on Americans. This created a strict line. The FBI handled domestic cases. The CIA handled foreign threats. But terrorism blurred that line. Al-Qaeda operatives moved between countries, using global networks. The agencies, however, still acted as if they lived in separate worlds. When the CIA tracked two hijackers entering the U.S., they didn't tell the FBI. When the FBI investigated suspicious flight students, they didn't tell the CIA. Each agency hoarded information like currency, guarding its leads, its sources, its reputation. It wasn't malice. It was culture. Decades of rivalry, mistrust, and red tape. In 2001, intelligence was fragmented. Thousands of dots existed, but no one had permission, or the full picture, to connect them. As one analyst later said, it was like having all the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, but each agency had locked its box. 5. The warning that came too late. On August 6, 2001, just over a month before the attacks, President George W. Bush received a presidential daily briefing titled, "Bin Laden Determined to Strike in the United States." It mentioned possible hijackings, FBI surveillance of suspects, and patterns of activity that looked eerily similar to earlier al-Qaeda plots. The president reportedly glanced at the memo, asked a few questions, and moved on. The memo wasn't specific. It didn't mention dates, flight numbers, or cities. To a president juggling dozens of threats worldwide, it seemed like another general warning. But history would turn that one document into a symbol of missed urgency, a moment when all the alarms were ringing, and yet, no one heard them clearly enough. 6. The morning of September 11th. When Flight 11 hit the North Tower, intelligence analysts around Washington were stunned. Within minutes, reports flooded in: hijackings, radar loss, phone calls from passengers. As the second plane struck, the realization hit. This was no accident. The nightmare scenario, the one they'd imagined, the one scattered across memos and warnings, was unfolding in real time. By the time the towers collapsed, nearly 3,000 people were dead. The intelligence community was already asking itself the question that would haunt it for decades. How did we miss this? 7. The 9/11 Commission. Anatomy of failure. In 2004, the 9/11 Commission report was released after 2 years of investigation. Its verdict was damning, but nuanced. It found that the failure was systemic, not singular. No one agency, no one official, no one decision could be blamed. Instead, the entire structure had failed. A structure designed for Cold War espionage, not 21st century terrorism. A structure that prized secrecy over collaboration. The commission concluded the attacks were a shock, but they should not have been a surprise. It wasn't a lack of clues. It was a lack of connection, communication, and imagination. As one CIA veteran said, "We were fighting yesterday's war while the enemy was inventing a new one." 8. Rebuilding the Watchtower. After 9/11, America rebuilt its intelligence apparatus from the ground up. The Department of Homeland Security was created. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, was established to unify 16 separate intelligence agencies. The Patriot Act expanded surveillance powers. The FBI and CIA began sharing data through joint task forces. The National Counterterrorism Center became a nerve hub for analyzing global threats. But these reforms came with a price: privacy concerns, overreach, and moral gray zones. As surveillance grew, so did public unease. In preventing the next attack, America had built a new kind of invisible empire, one where security and freedom constantly wrestled for dominance. The pendulum swung from complacency to control. But the deeper question remained: can any system, no matter how powerful, ever predict every threat? 9. The human factor. Technology can collect data. Algorithms can detect patterns, but they cannot see what only humans can: intent. The 9/11 failure wasn't just bureaucratic, it was human. Analysts dismissed leads as improbable. Superiors feared bureaucratic overreach. Agents, overwhelmed by noise, missed the signal. And behind it all was a dangerous illusion that America, with its satellites and spy networks, was invincible. Hubris blinded insight. The tragedy of 9/11 was not that intelligence failed to know, it was that it failed to believe what it already knew. 10. Lessons from the ashes. In the years since 9/11, more plots have been stopped, more connections made, and yet, The same vulnerabilities remain: over-reliance on technology, political pressure, and human fatigue. The deeper lesson of 9/11 isn't about planes or politics. It's about perception. It's the reminder that intelligence is not just about information. It's about understanding. That vigilance is not just about looking outward, but inward at our own blind spots. Because in the end, the story of 9/11 is not just a story of failure, it's a story of warning. That the greatest dangers often aren't invisible. They're right before our eyes, hidden in plain sight. Closing narration. Every empire believes it sees everything until the moment it doesn't. The fall of towers wasn't just a terrorist act. It was a mirror held up to a civilization that mistook information for wisdom. And as the world continues to evolve, from cyber warfare to artificial intelligence, the same timeless question lingers: can knowledge alone ever protect us if we fail to truly understand what it means? If you found this story fascinating, like, share, and subscribe to Timeless Questions channel, where we explore the civilizations, ideas, and mysteries that shaped humanity.